Hey guys, how's it going? It's your boy M.K.S here, back with another video, and welcome to part 2 of, I suppose, my dreams to help AS Roma, become world class, hopefully. And I'd love for Roma to become the new Galacticos, which is a term used to describe Real Madrid, who some say is owned by their government and by the Spanish government, and possibly the royal family in Spain, so the ruling class. Some argue, or I suppose they claim to be owned by the fans, so I'm not sure which one's true. But anyhow, they from a certain time in history, every year they bought the best possible players, mainly attacking players, however. And I would love for Roma to become the new Galacticos, as they are called. The nickname for Roma is the Giallorossi, which means gold and red. But because of my alliterations, and it's like begins with G, J, not J, sorry, G. I get those two mixed up. I have a strange dyslexia with that one. Like most dyslexics, transpose B's and D's by mix J for jugs or whatever, excuse the expression, with G for garden. So I hope it makes some sense. But anyway, yeah, I would love for them to be the new Galacticos, but only with a better goalkeeper and a better defense, so having the best possible players in all possible positions. So here are some of my ideas and dreams, ideas towards that dream, shall we say. And as ever, I would love to read your comments, and I hope people out there, especially Roma fans and fans of Italian football, will enjoy these videos. As I have this mad thing where I'm a fan of Italian football teams generally, but it's a bit of a dilemma because there's two Italian teams. There's Genoa, which is also Italy's oldest club, and there's also Roma, which is Italy's capital club. Or one of Italy's capital clubs, along with their arch rivals Lazio. But as it's called Roma and like Rome, I would love for them to become the best possible team that they can be. So anyway, here goes. So number 11. As I say, I'd love for Roma to have the best possible players in all possible positions, but not only the top, funny enough, not only the top best 11 players, but also the best squad players. So the best possible goalkeepers in the plural, obviously, including on the bench, and also the best possible 2 or 3 players, ideally in all possible positions. So as right back, left back, centre backs, midfielders, centre mids, wingers, and strikers and whatnot. And also, I'd love to see what they could do to change, to improve, so how they can attract more investment, what they can improve upon, both on and off the pitch, and things like that, and maybe how they could work with FIFA and UEFA within the rules, not breaking any laws, as I often say, especially not international laws or anything like that. But what they can do, how FIFA can help them, because at the moment I think they have to be careful of because of FFP, financial fair play. So I hope there'll be legal loopholes where they could bypass that sort of thing. Number 12, one thing I was thinking of is also I hope they'll continue to do what they do well and continue to work on that. So looking at what they can improve upon from the position they're already in, building a great project together into the future, like venturing into the future, of course, and also what they can do for the community, like what they can do for migrants, maybe how they can welcome migrants through football, bring them into the academies, work with Roma gypsies, because Roma and things like that. So hopefully Roma gypsies will support Roma, and hopefully having fans on that note all around the world. And again, not just having the best team players, but also the best possible squad players and attracting investment. And I'd love for, I was thinking the initials AS Roma, as it's as I call them Roma for short, but AS Roma, as I often say, is I was thinking they could be like Asians supporting Roma, Africans supporting Roma, Arabs to support Roma, and that kind of thing. Africans to support Roma, Asians to support Roma, and Arabs to support Roma. So to encourage, the club could try and do its best marketing possible to attract those fans, but also hopefully African and Asian nations and Arab nations to invest in them. If I had my way, I would love for African and Asian nations and Arab nations included, which I suppose either come under African or Asian nations generally, to have their own joint sovereign wealth funds where they network together and those joint sovereign wealth funds to invest as much as possible into Roma. Number 13, I know this is very biased of me because of the fact that it's an Italian team. I would love for, I hope I don't jinx this, but I would love for like, I know there's lots of conspiracy theories on them, if I'm honest, but I would love for like the Rothschild, Rockefellers, and even the Vatican and Catholic organizations to invest in the club, and again for the club to have, from a selfish point of view, to be honest. Again, going on number 13, I would love for the club to have as many investors as possible. I would love for there to be like the Rothschild Investment Bank for Roma, investing in Roma, Rockefeller's Investment Bank for Roma, and things like that, or Wealth Management Fund or whatever, due to my patterns. So I think of like, let's say PIF for Roma, 4 being the fourth in the sentence, or Arabs to invest in Roma, or Arabs to support Roma. So it's like 2 being the second in a sentence. So I have these strange patterns. Again, I hope I don't jinx it because it's the 13th. But anyway, moving on, number 14, I hope that if the club gets so much investment, which I dream they will get, which will help them to become the new Galacticos. Sometimes I'm torn between calling them the next Galacticos or the new Galacticos, but I think the new Galacticos would be better because then it would imply there's not going to be any other Galacticos, hopefully. Hopefully it'll only be Roma in the future, well, I suppose Real Madrid to an extent, but hopefully they'll kind of replace them as the top Galacticos, shall we say. But as I often say, with great power comes great responsibility. So I hope Roma will do a lot of good things to benefit the world, and solve problems and things like that. So as much money as they get, hopefully they'll do a lot of good with that money as well. Number 15, as I say, I would look for all possible forms of all possible legal forms of investment and sponsorship and whatnot to come into the club. I would love for the club to be co-owned by companies that begin with R, and also like Arab nations, Arab sovereign wealth funds, African and Asian sovereign wealth funds, and that kind of thing. And again, to have the best possible players in all possible positions. So the best possible goalkeepers. Obviously, you only have one on the pitch at the same time, but I'm talking about like squad players as well. So even though they could bring them off the bench. Number 16, I would love to read other people's ideas on, I know I always include that for number 16, on what could be done to improve Roma. And one of the things I was thinking is a dilemma. Another dilemma I have, I keep seeming to mention dilemma, and struggling with my English, but you probably won't believe I was born and bred in the UK, considering I can't speak proper English. But on a serious note, one dilemma I have is, how does Roma, I'd love to ask Roma fans questions and go to Rome and talk about my ideas and interview people on the street and on the roads of Rome and that kind of thing, but I'd love to know how Roma can develop good young players whilst at the same time having this Galacticos sort of team. So that's a bit of a dilemma. I was thinking on the bench, it would be cool if they had at least 3 or 4 younger players, or as many young players as possible. So like if Roma's doing really well in a game, maybe they could have 3, 4, 5, or even 6 young players. So I hope they'll develop good young Italian players as well, and maybe work with the Italian government and politicians and council and things like that. But yeah, it's a bit of a dilemma. Like, how could they have the best players and then still give young people an opportunity? And how do they build for the here and now, for the short term, and also for the long term as well? Another question I'd love to ask is, could the Colosseum, is a controversial question, I think, but if I'm honest, but could the Colosseum be rebuilt as a football stadium? Or even, I don't normally like to destroy things, but there could be, like, obviously there must be loads of pictures of the Colosseum on Google and things like that, Google Images and whatnot, and people must have lots of pictures of the Colosseum and how it's looked over history, perhaps even. And I'm sure there's videos recorded from tourists and that kind of thing, which could be kept alive, so to speak. But could the Colosseum be knocked down and rebuilt as a training stadium for Roma, or even Roma's new stadium or whatnot, especially for youth development? Even the best possible resources and opportunities for young Roma players. And again, they could use migrants and refugees, not use, but utilize towards a mutual benefit. in the youth development setup. So again, I hope that'll benefit the national team and the club. But I'd love to know how they can develop young players while still having the best possible players and having the Galacticos, and how could they have the best possible players in all possible positions and have the best mix of overseas and Italian players, and how can they develop younger Italian players as well. I'm sure there's something else I was going to say, but I can't quite remember. But yeah, so I'd love to know if you think it would be sacrilegious to knock down the Colosseum, or basically it's a no-go zone, or do you think there's pictures of it, images and whatnot, and recordings, so it could be knocked down to build a stadium for the team, or even for the youth, or both? Maybe the youth could have the best possible facilities and be able to train in the same places as the regular team as well. But yeah, how do they develop the Galacticos and still develop the youth, and also develop for the national team? Moving on, number 17. I often think of, like, for 17, like my imagination. So I would love for Roma to be able to win so many Champions Leagues, sometimes maybe 8 out of 10 Champions Leagues, or as the saying goes, 8 out of 10 cats. But for some reason, I think it would be cool if they could win like 8 out of 10 Champions League. And then sometimes, if the world lasted long enough, I would love to see Roma winning as many Champions Leagues and World Club Cups as possible, like even overtaking Real Madrid. I'd love to see that happen. But as I say, if the world lasts long enough for that to happen, as Real Madrid are already on 14, and Roma haven't won any yet of the Champions League. So I'd love to see them win Champions Leagues and even World Club Cups, and win as many as possible. Ideally, like even 10, 15, maybe even 20 Champions Leagues and World Club Cups and things like that, and become pretty much an invincible side, so to speak. But I think they've got to play as a team as well, not be too complacent. But with all that investment, I would love to see what they could achieve. Again, I'd love to see them have a bit of a dilemma, because I don't know how they could develop youth at the same time, and give them game time and opportunities. Because even if they have them in the academies and have the best academies, how do they ensure that they get game time if Roma have all these great superstar players and you're only allowed a certain size of squad and that kind of thing, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Number 18, again, I hope to see what Roma could do to improve race relations, tackle racism, violence, hooliganism, crime, criminality, and that kind of thing, of course, and to make the world a better place. And number 19, supporting projects like Indigenous Africans and Australasians in STEM. And number 20, once again, how can they develop good young players and still produce for the future, and including for the national team, and at the same time develop for the here and now as well. I'd love to know those sorts of things. Anywho, I think I've waffled enough. So I'd love to know what you think as ever. I hope you made it this far, but if so, thanks so much, and I hope I didn't bore anyone to death, and I am out. Peace and love.